Hey everyone, I am Corey from This and That, and welcome to my channel. If you are new here, thank you so much for coming to check out my channel. And if you are returning, thank you for coming to check out another one of my videos. So this week's video, I'm going to be doing some more from scratch cooking. I'm also going to be showing you how you can save money by taking some simple ingredients from the grocery store and saving money by putting these away in the freezer, or you can even preserve them another way so that way you can have these in your home or your pantry for whenever you need them. So let's check it out. Today I'm making whole wheat sandwich bread for my daughter. We love having homemade bread, so I'm adding some warm water and some warm milk as well as my instant yeast. And I will be sharing the recipe in my description box, so be sure to look at that below. This is the second time I've made this bread and we really love it. Right now I'm adding a few cups of whole wheat flour. This is the sponge that I'm making, which is the center of the bread that makes it nice and squishy and soft. So this is a really important step with making bread. I'm going to mix this up really well so that all the ingredients that I just added are nice and uniform in the bowl. Now I'm going to cover this up for a while and let it double in size. Now that it's doubled in size in my bowl, I'm now going to work on adding some other ingredients, and then I'm going to start mixing my dough. I'll be adding some honey into the bowl here. And then I'm adding some butter that I've let get to room temperature, and I've cut it into smaller pieces so it's easier for the mixer. I didn't have any lemon juice fresh, so I decided to use apple cider vinegar, which you could also use in the recipe that I'm using. And then I'm going to add some salt as well as some more flour. And now I'm going to let my mixer do the heavy work of mixing this up to make a great dough for my whole wheat sandwich bread. And here it is after it's been mixing for quite a bit. I believe the recipe said about 8 to 10 minutes. I like using avocado spray, and this one, it doesn't have any propellant in it, so it's one of my favorite ones. So I'm adding some avocado oil to around the outside of the bowl, and then I'm going to take my whole wheat dough and I'm going to add it to this greased bowl. And I will rub it around the entire bowl so that way the whole ball of dough is coated with the avocado oil. And once that's done, I'm going to cover this up and I'm going to let it rise. Now that it's had some time to rise, I am going to be spraying an aluminum baking can with more of my avocado spray. And I'm lightly flouring my work surface with some of my whole wheat flour, so that way when I take the dough out and roll it, it doesn't get stuck to my counter, my rolling pin. The whole wheat dough I found really easy to work with compared to some other bread doughs that I've made. This one just held together really well. And I'm sorry that I kind of kept getting in the way of the camera. I'm still working on some good camera angles in my kitchen. I have a really small kitchen, so it gets a little challenging sometimes. But here I'm going to roll this all out, and then what I'm going to do is roll this into itself so it makes a roll, and then that will go inside my baking pan. You might have heard my daughter making some noise in the background. She is always home while I'm cooking and baking, so it's hard to keep her quiet sometimes. I'm going to cover this and let it rise again before putting it in the oven. And here it's risen, so it's not risen as much as I would have liked it to, but it rose for 2 hours and it looks like it's as good as it's going to get, even with warming it a little bit. So I put it in the oven and here we go. Here is the final baked bread. And one of the things I like to do to have my sandwich bread really look like sandwich bread and make sure that it is very well sliced is I use an electric carving knife. Think the kind of knife that you use for cutting a turkey. And this has worked really, really well. I just eyeball it myself of the size of the slices. The first one I did, I made the slices a little bit too big. So the second bread, I'm cutting a little bit thinner. It's a little easier for making toast and for making sandwiches, but this works really, really well. I've also seen tools where you can put the loaf of bread into this special tool with slits in it, and then you can take a knife and cut right through the slit to get more uniformed bread. But for me, it just seemed like an unnecessary purchase when I can just eyeball this and I can do it myself with a carving knife. And here's the finished loaf of whole wheat bread. And what I do is I take it and put it into a freezer bag, and I keep it in the freezer and take out a few pieces at a time. And we usually use this in about a month. My daughter's mostly the one who eats it, and she loves to have grilled cheese sandwiches. So here's one of her grilled cheese sandwiches made with my homemade wheat bread. Check out the recipe below. So a meal we really enjoy in our house that is very quick and easy to make is pulled barbecue chicken in the slow cooker. I got this really big package of chicken breasts and I made pulled chicken with it. I did a lemon pepper chicken meal with it, and I also had extras left over for my daughter and I to have chicken a couple of days for lunch. So we got quite a few meals out of this big package of chicken. So I took 2 chicken breasts, and what I did is I cut the fat off of them, and then I cut these chicken breasts in half. So that way I would have 4 pieces. This just allows the chicken to cook that much quicker in the slow cooker. You don't have to do this. This is just my preference for doing this. So you can do this as you please. I've done it both ways. I just feel like it cooks a little faster when I'm short on time. It cooks a bit faster in the slow cooker. And this is something that you can cook on low for 6 to 8 hours or high for 4 hours. Just make sure your chicken is cooked all the way through. Here I'm having some barbecue sauce. You can use your own homemade barbecue sauce. You can use store-bought sauce, whatever you prefer. And what you do is just take this and make sure the chicken is coated really, really well in the slow cooker. In my original video, I forgot to film that I also add 2 capfuls of Wright's liquid smoke before I cook the chicken in the slow cooker. This gives it a nice smoked flavor, and it really makes the chicken taste really delicious. So I checked my chicken with the meat thermometer, and it is cooked all the way through. And now what I'm going to do is take my handheld mixer, and my favorite way for shredding chicken or pulled pork is to use a hand mixer. I just find it really makes the process that much easier. And it just shreds it to a really nice consistency, which is great for on the plate, in a salad, or you can have it in a sandwich, whichever way you prefer. I just really like it this way instead of using forks, or they have those meat claws that you can use. And I mean, any of those ways to do it is absolutely fine too. This is just my preference. So you're going to make sure you shred your chicken really, really good, and it's got all that really nice juice from the chicken cooking. And you want to leave that in there because that is what helps make your pulled chicken stay nice and moist and juicy. And this night I had the pulled barbecue chicken with some dinner rolls that I had made from scratch another day and some fresh corn. So in my quest to try to save money and eat a bit healthier is I stopped buying canned beans and I bought dry beans myself, and I figured it would just be easier to cook them and make them myself. So what I did here is I have some pinto beans and some black beans and some kidney beans in a separate pan, and I let them soak overnight. And then what I'm going to do is boil these up and let them cook the very next day and make some beans to put away. So here the kidney beans are fully cooked. Please make sure that you have cooked them all the way through, because if you do not cook your kidney beans all the way through, they can be toxic. So make sure they are super tender and well cooked before you eat them. So what my plan was is tonight I'm making chili, so I made a batch of beans for my chili, and then the leftover beans I purposely made extra because I'm going to put them in some snack size bags and then put these in a freezer bag and put them in the freezer. So they're already portioned out for the next 2 times that I'm going to make chili. And this was a much, much cheaper way than buying cans of beans for 80+ cents a piece. And these don't have any salt and they don't have any additives in them, which is a lot healthier, and you can prepare them whatever way you'd like for whatever dish you plan to be using them for. So this worked really well. I mean, it wasn't really that much time consuming. And like I said, I got 2 extra packages of kidney beans, and I'm also going to bag up some pinto beans and some black beans. And I chose to cook the pinto beans and the black beans together because they're about the same size and they cook about the same. So this worked out really well for me cooking together. The pinto beans are a little bit of a funky color, but that's just because some of the black bean coloring is, come off onto them, but they still tasted absolutely fine. So here I'm just going to fill up a couple of more snack size bags. And I mean, these size bags are pretty similar to having a 15-ounce can. You can add more or less depending on what you need for your recipes. You can use a larger bag, like a sandwich bag if you want to, and then put that in a freezer bag. So, we use whatever size works for what you generally use beans for. For us right now, we just use them for chili, so small containers worked really good for me. And I just made sure to write the month and the year and what was in the bag, so when I have them in the freezer, it's just that much easier to recognize what I have. These will all go into my freezer and they'll be ready to eat. I can plop them right in the chili frozen. And if you don't want to freeze your beans, if you know how to pressure can and have a recipe, you can also preserve them that way as well. Here I'm using the turkey that if you saw the different ways that you can get the most out of your turkey, I made some ground turkey with my KitchenAid mixer. And this is some of the turkey that I had vacuum sealed and put in my freezer. And I like to make turkey chili for my family. It just gives us a break from having ground beef or beef too many times a week. I'll be sure to share the recipe for this also in my description box, so be sure to check that out below. I do a modified version of the recipe that I'm going to share just because it's one of those things that we don't like very hot chili. We like it on the mild side, so we don't put paprika and some of the other things that make it a little bit on the spicier side. But for the most part, I do this recipe pretty similar to the one that I'm going to share. And again, it's how I base my recipe off of it. I just double the recipe. The recipe calls for 1 pound of beef or turkey, and we use 2 pounds because I like to make a bunch and make it last for the week. So I will link that down below, and here I'm just adding all my spices. I like to do this when the meat's about cooked halfway through because I just find as it continues cooking, it really takes in the spices and the seasoning and just makes the meat taste that much better. And you're going to let this cook up and finish cooking all the way through. And then when the meat is completely cooked, this is where I'm going to add the beans and also going to be adding in tomato sauce. So this year was the first time I ever made my own tomato sauce and canned it myself with tomatoes from my garden, and came out really well. It's just a very simple tomato sauce with just like onion and garlic in it. I followed a recipe in my ball canning book and I water bathed it. And I made it specifically so that way when I make my chili, I have homemade canned tomato sauce. And here I'm going to add in all the beans that I had just cooked up this morning. And you just let this sit for about a half an hour on the stove simmering, and then you can have some delicious chili. So one of the things I like to preserve in my freezer is celery. When it goes on sale for like 97 cents or 99 cents a bag, I'll buy a bag or 2 of it and I will blanch it and freeze it so that way I have it for whatever meal I need it for. I keep the leaves and some of the skinnier stalks and I put those in a bag and I freeze those to use for bone broth. So I cut up all the celery, I boil some water, I get some ice water ready so that way when it's done boiling I can put it in. So again, save all the leaves. You're going to want to use the leaves for bone broth that you make. And then you cut up the rest of the celery, and this is what you're going to boil for just a few minutes and then put in ice water, and you're going to let it dry and bag it and freeze it. And then you have it whenever you need it instead of buying it from the grocery store. So here, now that the water has come to a boil, I am dumping different size celery. I cut some into smaller pieces and some into larger pieces depending on what type of recipe I'm going to use it for. I'll separate it afterwards into my snack size bags and then put those into a larger freezer bag in my freezer. And once it's boiled for about 2.5 minutes, you're going to take it out and put it into ice water. You're going to let it sit for a bit, get cool, and then I take mine and put it in a bowl lined with paper towels to help dry it out. Once they're all dry, what you're going to do is separate them. If you made them all the same size, you don't have to worry about separating. But again, I made some a little bit longer and some a little bit smaller, depending on what my recipe calls for. And I just separated these and I bagged these, and I'm going to put them in the freezer. And this is a really cost-effective way to have what you need at your fingertips and not have to run to the grocery store. Oh no, I have no celery. And now you have celery every time you need it. It's a little time consuming to do it, but you do it a few times a year and you're all set for the entire year for all of your meals. It's amazing all of a sudden how much fresh celery I've actually been using in a lot of my recipes. And just being able to go to the freezer and grab it has been absolutely wonderful. Some people like to use a plastic container to put their bags into. I prefer to use a larger gallon freezer bag just because I find it takes up a bit less space in my freezer. And then I write on this and when the date is, and I'm ready to use it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you will like, subscribe, share with your friends if you enjoy this channel. As always, stay safe and be well.